Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming, Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. Our topic tonight is acupuncture, and my guest is my friend and my colleague, Dr. Tim Pearson. Tim is a chiropractor and an acupuncture provider, and he also is the senior director at the Mercy College of Health Sciences. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me here. Much appreciated.
Well, it's great to have you here, and we're going to learn a lot tonight. Before we talk about your position at the Mercy Cancer Center, where you provide acupuncture for our patients, let's get to know you. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Hastings, Minnesota, just south of St. Paul. I've lived here long enough now that I've mostly lost my good Minnesota accent.
Oofta,
it comes out well.
yeah.
Oofta, yeah, left salutefisk. It comes out once in a while, but I talk
How
like an Iowan
big
now.
was your high school class? How many in your graduating class?
402.
Okay, so
Yeah,
pretty
good
big.
suburban school.
And what was your claim to fame in high school?
My claim to fame in high school. Oof. Well, you know what? It's interesting. I've gotten into a lot of musical theater and choir since then, but I didn't do any of that in high school. I was just nothing but sports.
Okay, and what
I was-
sports?
I did track, tennis, football.
Okay.
Yep. Not
And
hockey.
What
sadly
position
enough.
did you play in football?
I was a wide receiver.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you're fast.
I was.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to be challenging anyone into a sprint anytime soon. I don't think.
So in your high school athletic career, which sport were you most successful in?
Football.
All
Yeah,
right.
I went to, I initially went to college with the full intention. It was Division III, so nothing too spectacular, but of playing football. I ended up playing tennis instead,
Okay.
which was great, which was awesome. But yeah, I really loved football.
And so where'd you go to college?
Wartburg College,
Oh.
Waverly, Iowa.
And how did you choose Wartburg?
I wanted something kind of small. I wanted a private school. I was a big and still am a University of Minnesota fan, but 62,000 students there really wasn't my style.
You
And lo and behold,
probably-
there was Wartburg, which was smaller than my high school, but I visited there. They had great facilities. They had a really good choir, and I was interested in that. And I thought, this is home. This is me. So off I went to Waverly.
And what was your first declared major when you started college?
Journalism.
Okay.
Yes.
And then when did it switch? Did you graduate in
Yes.
journalism, or
So,
did you switch
can I tell you
to
a story?
pre-professional? Yes.
All right. So there, about 3 weeks into our freshman year, the Wartburg Choir, we were going on a retreat to Iwalu, which is, I think it still is. It's a Bible camp in Strawberry Point, Iowa. It's going to be
Okay.
a weekend.
I was thinking it was a country in Africa.
It is not.
No. Okay.
No.
Iwalu.
Iwalu. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know what that stands for. I think
Okay.
it's an acronym. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, we're going on a retreat, and so it's get there on your own. So we all piled into cars. 6 of us freshmen piled in one car, and there was a specific route we were told to take. Well, naturally, since we were freshmen and smarter than everybody else, we thought, we're not going to take that route. We know a shortcut. We are going a different route. Well, this route took us off the main roads and went on gravel roads. So that sounds fine and dandy, except it was September, which means that in September, the corn is about 8 feet high. And all of these intersections in Northeast Iowa are uncontrolled intersections you really can't see, especially with the corn being 8 feet high. It's like you're going through a tunnel. So at one point, we came to an intersection at the exact same time a giant red pickup came to an intersection coming from our left. And we had a really violent collision. Naturally, none of us were wearing our seatbelts, another not very smart thing to do. I was knocked out. I went right into the windshield, got knocked out. I came to, everyone else is still in the car in various states of disrepair. Ended up going for some help. Ambulances came next, and I was the one who I thought was fine. I was the one who went up to a house and 911. They came. I said, I'm fine. I had everyone else. But next thing I know, they're strapping me to a gurney and saying, well, you might have a broken neck. I did not have a broken neck, fortunately, but I was really, really, really hurt bad. And so for Really, most of the first semester, I was troubled significantly by headaches, by neck pain, just really debilitating stuff. And I went to the chiropractor in Waverly, who in my mind, I always thought of him as old Doc Dickens, and I'm pretty sure he was younger than I am right now. But in my mind at that point, he was old Doc Dickens. And he really, really helped me. I mean, he really saved my existence really at that point. And so because of that personal experience of being helped in a way that was just transformative, I think this is something that I need to look into. So I became a biology major then.
And that automobile accident was during your first year of college?
3 weeks into my freshman year.
Wow.
Right.
So you switched to biology. So you were sort of pre-professional or pre-chiropractic.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And then Waverly has I think a big program for people going into health sciences.
It does.
So then when you graduated from college, did you go right into chiropractic school?
I wanted to do something sort of interesting before I got into another 4 years of school and got locked into whatever took place after that. So I took the better part of a year and I actually walked across the country, half the country anyway. I started right in my hometown, Hastings, right in the Mississippi, dipped my right foot in the Mississippi River, and it was a little over 6 months. I ended up at the Pacific Ocean at a place called Dillon Beach.
And
California.
Was this a solitary walk?
Yes, it was.
And did you have a sleeping bag and you slept out in the wilderness, or did you?
See, I feel like that would make a better story, but truth be told, yeah, I carried the tent with me, my sleeping bag with me, but in 6 months on the road, I used my tent exactly 3 nights. And the reason is I kept getting invited in by people.
Yeah.
I would meet people along the road all the time. Hey, would you want to ride? And I would say, no, I'm walking. What do you mean you're walking? Well, I'm walking. Well, I live up there 8 miles. You want to spend the night? Okay. And so I spend the night. They'd give me supper, give me breakfast. They'd say, my brother Frank lives the next town 20 miles down the road. Want me to call Frank? Sure, call Frank. Okay. And so I don't know why, but they seem to sort of trust me. And I used my tent 3 nights and a half.
Wow. And so where did you run into the Pacific Ocean? Where were you?
A place called Dillon Beach, which is north of San Francisco.
Okay, yeah.
It's in California.
And then how'd you get back?
Plane took me 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, so applying for chiropractic school, is it like medical school where there's a match, or back when you were applying
Well, I knew, there are a finite number of schools, and the ones in the Midwest that people are most aware of are Northwestern in the Twin Cities where I went, Palmer here in Iowa, National in Chicago, and I actually only applied to the one in Minnesota. Okay. I was comfortable going back to Minnesota, and I got accepted, and there I went.
And tell us a bit about what's the training in chiropractic school. Is it parallel to medical school where the first couple years are more classroom and then you get the clinical, or do you get clinical like from day one? You kind of dip your toe in the clinical starting day one, but for the most part, the first couple of years are heavy anatomy, heavy physiology, heavy neurology. Now, chiropractic being what it is, not nearly as much pharmacology, but a lot more neurology. And so that was a focus. And then by the time you get to your 4th year, you're doing your clinical, you're doing rotation, which are in 3 different places. And at that point, as you start kind of looking ahead and where you want to be and where you want to live the rest of your life. And I kind of wanted to not be in Minnesota, not that it wasn't a great state, but I'd lived there most of my life, but I wanted to be somewhere in a neighbor state. I didn't want to be a 14-hour drive from family and friends. And so I looked at Wisconsin and Iowa and the Dakotas, and already being familiar with Iowa, went to undergrad down here. And I really wanted to, the reason why you kind of want to plan that is I wanted to make that final third, the final 4 months of my rotation, be somewhere down here. So you can sort of get stuff ready for when you're out on your own. And I really, really wanted to practice in a small town. I like that vibe. I just like being able to walk into someone who may be going in the barber shop or see someone you don't know at the corner. I like that, but
I grew up in the Twin Cities. I really wanted to live in a city. And so I set up my practice in a town called Panora, which is about 35 miles west of here on Lake Panorama. And wonderful. I lived in Urbandale, to speak in, because I'm used to living in the city, but I practiced for 19 years in Panorama.
Oh, 19 years.
Mhm.
And was that a solo practice? Or did you-
Yes. Yep. This was.
So we'll talk some more about your practice, but we're gonna shift a little bit because we're gonna talk tonight about acupuncture. So you're a chiropractor. At what point did you get interested in expanding your healing talents to include acupuncture?
I know exactly when it was. I can pinpoint the actual day. I lived near campus up at Northwestern in a duplex. There were 10 of us jammed into this duplex. Not a very nice duplex, if I'm being honest, but still, it worked just fine. One of my roommates played in a club hockey team. And one evening he came back and he'd really messed up his ankle, really turned his ankle. So he got the skate off and the thing's just blown up like a balloon. It's red, it's inflamed. It's just, he can't move it. He's in a lot of pain. One of my other roommates, his father was also a DC and happened to be there.
And for those who don't know, DC is
Doctor
a
of Chiropractic. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yep.
And he was there that weekend for some reason. And so he's looking at it and he said, well, do you mind if I do some acupuncture on this? And my roommate Jeff's, sure, play anything. And he used acupuncture on it. And it was remarkable. While it wasn't right in front of my eyes, you could tell that the inflammation was going down, the mobility was going up. He was clearly in less discomfort, less pain, and he got up and he was hobbling around so he could actually function, but night and day difference from what he was a half hour before. And I thought, well, there's something to this. I don't know anything about acupuncture. I've never had acupuncture, but I need to find out more. And thankfully, that was one of the ancillary subjects you could become certified in at the same time.
In school.
Yes.
Gotcha. So very early on.
There is a whole wing of the school of Northwestern University of Health Sciences that is Eastern medicine. And so I said, well, where do I start signing up for this? And it's been really a godsend. It's been a
so did
part
you
of
incorporate acupuncture into your profession right at the very
right
beginning?
away? Yes.
Right away. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So did you purchase your first set of needles while in medical school, or is there a tradition that somebody hands them down to you?
Why didn't someone hand them to me? Now that I think about it, no, we're on the hook.
Although now that I think about it, they're disposable. You don't get the 1,000-year-old Chinese ones.
Thank goodness.
Down
no,
for several generations.
The sharpened stones.
No,
and
that's gone.
No,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
a few years.
Right. Okay. So tell us about the fundamentals of acupuncture. I'm kind of curious. You mentioned that at your school of health sciences that there was a whole wing that was Eastern medicine. Were there people from the East that were teaching the Eastern medicine?
There were indeed.
And I kind of think that, and I've had acupuncture from you, and you're great, but there's this idea that your acupuncturist should be like 80-year-old with a long white beard, who doesn't speak a word of English and has like 1,000-year-old needles and just comes in and, but there's probably something to be said for learning exactly what to do in a school.
You're right. And that is, and there's a reason for that. Listen, the history of acupuncture, it really is shrouded in the mists of time. There is, 6,000 years ago, there is evidence of sharpened stones and sharpened sticks being used in a therapeutic manner. Not definitive, but it's certainly suggestive. 5,000 years ago, there was a lone traveler. I'll paint a picture here. There was a lone traveler in the Alps between what is now Italy and Austria. And he was a hunter, he was a gatherer. You can tell by what he was wearing, what he was carrying. He was used to a life of violence. As he was crossing this particular portion of the Alps, he fell into a crevice and he died, and the ice took him. And he was there for 5,000 years until 1991. 1991, yes, until the ice started to melt, started to recede, and they discovered this body intact, immaculately intact, hair, skin, contents of the stomach, everything. He's called the Iceman of Otzi. I had the chance to see him 2 years ago in a town in Bolzano, Italy. But on his skin, on his back, there is a series of tattoos which remarkably correspond to what are many of the common acupuncture points. Not definitive, but it certainly is suggestive. And then a few hundred years BC, there was a tomb that was discovered not that long ago, and it dated back to a few hundred years BC. And there are documents in there that describe these mysterious channels on the human body that carries energy. We're talking about acupuncture there, right? And then finally we get in from the unknown to the known, because in 100 BC there was a textbook written called The Emperor's Book on Internal Medicine. This is all in China, of course, on internal medicine, and it describes acupuncture in detail. So when you talk about that being the kind of cliche, well, there's a reason for it, because for the vast majority of acupuncture history, it was practiced in the Far East. Now that has changed. That has changed for a number of reasons, not least of which, as I continue my story here, I guess, but in 1971, Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State, and he was making a trip to China ahead of Richard Nixon's famous trip to China in 1972. And with him went a press corps, including a gentleman by the name of Rustin, who wrote for the New York Times. And he was there while in China, while in Beijing. He had an attack of acute appendicitis. And so his appendix was removed and went all fine, but he had some post-operative issues. He had abdominal distension, he had pain. And as he's in the hospital, well, one of the physicians on staff of the hospital was an acupuncturist. And so he treated him with acupuncture for these symptoms. And to the great wonderment of this New York Times writer, he found a great diminishment of his symptoms. And when he got back, he wrote a story which was carried on the front page of the New York Times, which said, I think the title was, "So, about my surgery in China." And it laid out his experiences with acupuncture. And that was really a turning point in those of us here in the West in kind of hearing about, learning about, understanding what was then called alternative medicine. I don't know if it's really called that much anymore, but that was a real seminal point in opening the West to what had traditionally been an Eastern therapy.
And at that same time, the 60s and the early 70s was sort of this opening of, besides just something like acupuncture, the whole Buddhism and the bringing the philosophy and yoga, all of that was sort of finding its way.
Yes, meditative practices as well.
Yes,
of course.
So as you learned acupuncture, what's the basis of it? So you mentioned energy channels. And so those of us trained in Western medicine probably think more of the neurologic system as, the brain, the spinal cord, the nerves coming out. Some of the nerves are motor nerves that make muscles move, and some are sensory nerves, and sort of have this more of a mechanical sense that needles must be, going into a muscle or affecting a nerve. And so I think most of us think of it more neuromuscular rather than energy channels. In the 20th century, when you were in chiropractic school, were you taught energy channels, or were you taught meridians related to the nervous system, or are they in parallel?
So it's really interesting, because I struggled the first year when I was learning acupuncture, because I would come out of a hardcore science class, out of working with the cadaver, or a neurobiology class, sciencey kind of stuff that we're sort of used to here, right? And then I would go into a class and they were talking about chi and yin and yang and jing. And I'm like, I don't get it. It just didn't make sense because I kept trying to kind of put it in Western terms and sort of take this square peg and fit it into this round hole that I've been used to. And finally, one of the professors told me to stop thinking so much. He said, don't try to make the two fit together. They do at some level, somewhere they do, but from a surface perception standpoint, there are two different approaches, and just think about it in the way that we're delivering it. And at its heart, acupuncture is about chi, and that's a word probably most of us have heard before. We spell it QI, it's pronounced chi. That is the energy, the life force that permeates our body. Now, I know that sounds kind of Star Warsy, that may the force be with you, that kind of thing, but in Chinese thought, this chi is carried by channels. They're carried by meridians. There are 12 meridians that go throughout the body. And it's the evenness and balance and harmony and symmetry of this chi that allows our body to function at a high possible level as it can. And that's really important. I mean, think about, I had a bagel this morning and I was putting some butter in my bagel, and I could have taken a clump of butter and put it on one side of the bagel and nothing on the other side. I could have still eaten it. It would have been okay. It wouldn't have been nearly as good if I'd spread the butter all the way around. Same thing with this chi, with this energy, with this life force. We want it to be symmetrical and harmonious throughout the body, because problems arise. The body doesn't work like it should when there's too much over there and too little over there, which is why these points, there's 361 principal acupuncture meridian points on the body. They can be looked at like little spigots that you can turn on and turn off and redirect the flow of this chi to achieve that balance and that harmony. Now, you asked about neuromuscular stuff, and those points I just talked about in the umbrella of acupuncture needling. One half, there are two types of needling that are of both utmost importance. One is what I described, meridian points. There's a whole other side of points that are called ashi points, which is it's a Mandarin term, and literally it's Mandarin for ouch. These are points that aren't on fixed locations in the body. They're found by palpating. And if I would, if you get patient feedback on this. So he's reached over and you're palpating, and if you find something where the patient goes, that's it. That's the literal translation of ashi. And these are points that we know better as trigger points. Now, most of us have heard about that before. Hypercontractile areas of muscle, or inflammatory spots and ligaments, tendons, fascia, anything that's ouchy. And what we find is that by putting needles into those points, there is a wonderful therapeutic response that helps alleviate it. Now, we know how to do that just sort of inherently. If you're a carpenter and you spend all day with a nail gun and a power drill, and you come home like, oh man, my arm is really killing me. What's the first thing you do? You grab your arm, right? You press on your arm, because pressure is therapeutic. And so you're performing acupressure on those ashi points, trigger points.
So we'll get more into the technique. Since you were studying both chiropractic medicine and acupuncture, does your knowledge of the chi and the channels, does that influence the way you do chiropractic? Or do you completely separate that and you go, no, this patient today I'm doing chiropractic and I'm practicing it the way I did, even if I didn't know anything about acupuncture? Or do you incorporate chiropractic techniques with your knowledge of chi?
They really fit hand in glove. Okay. There is, for most patients that I'm doing acupuncture on, I will also do some soft tissue work, acupressure, ashi points, because that's part of it. That's part of the equation. And if you try to compartmentalize too much, and I'm just going to do this or just do this, you miss stuff. We are all, I know you embrace a whole a holistic philosophy, which is wonderful. And practitioners do that now. That's such a change from 40, 50, 60 years ago. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but the word holistic comes from holos. It's Greek, which means entirety. And that's about treating the being as in with all its component parts, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, because they all add up to a picture of health. And if you just try to do this or this or this or this and not all of it together, you won't adequately treat that person in a holistic manner.
Okay. So I think that is, yes, you practice chiropractic. You practice your healing arts with patients differently because you did have the acupuncture training.
Yes.
What, just out of curiosity, at the time you went to school, what percentage of your class took acupuncture as an elective?
I probably had 5 out of, in my particular class, there were 73.
Okay.
So not very many.
Many.
No,
Okay.
no, that's
Gotcha.
changed as well.
And then now it seems to me that the ability to take short classes in acupuncture has become more common, and different individuals with different healing traditions may take acupuncture in shortened version. Is it still, do you think there's a fundamental learning of the same 371 points and the same channels or is there an abbreviated courses that some people fly to Santa Fe to take over a weekend?
Yeah, that is a sore subject. There's a term that's used. I'm sure most people have heard of it. It's called dry needling, and people sometimes think dry needling is different than acupuncture. Dry needling literally is the ashi points. So when I talk about the 2 different kinds of acupuncture points, meridian points, dry needling points, you need by law, you're required to be certified in meridian therapy to use meridian points, but there isn't any such regulation about using other neuromuscular points. And so the term that was created by someone, I don't know, was dry needling. I don't really understand the term. There's no such thing as wet needling, but it is a sore subject a little bit. You've got the AMA, the National Chiropractic Society, the National Acupuncture Society have all put out statements saying we really, really want everybody who is saying they're dry needling to actually have their 1,000 hours of actual acupuncture training, because to your point, you can sort of learn the mechanics. Anybody can. Anybody here, I could tell you in 10 seconds how to insert a needle. That's not hard. But along with that, there is an art that goes into kind of understanding the chi, the energy aspect, and the holistic aspect of the body, so you can fully and adequately treat that person.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but when you think of trigger points, you think of, when I get a pain around my shoulder blade, I get a tennis ball, I lay on the floor, I do acupressure, without any training, but sort of this understanding that you push where it hurts and that you eventually relieve it. Now, I imagine dry needling has similarities to that. It's acupressure, but also with the needle.
And that's the difference, really, because we all rub sore spots, and that's awesome. That's an innate intelligence. We all do that, but it's also less invasive than sticking a needle through your skin. So in my mind, there's a significant difference there.
Gotcha. And so with the dry needling, that is putting a needle into a trigger spot where there's some knotted up muscle, does the needle go deeper than it would if you're doing the needling for the meridians?
It's all about feel. There are suggested depths for the needles. Sometimes it's just subcutaneous. If it's a place that's very not much flesh, the scalp, for instance, right on the edge of your finger. Sometimes it goes in a long ways. But most of the time, when you put it in, if you've ever seen acupuncture done, we're turning it. There's a turning that goes as we're putting it in, and we're feeling. And it's not even I'm not sure I can even intelligently say what I'm feeling for. You just sort of know.
So you're rotating.
You're rotating it.
You are
Yes.
putting it in.
Yes.
And typically it's quite superficial, but sometimes you go deeper.
Yeah, depending where it is. If I'm putting in a spot that's pretty fleshy, it's going to go all the way up to the hilt. I should have brought something with me. I didn't bring one with me. Sometimes it's not very much, but it really does go by
But you might
feel.
insert it inches.
You can insert a full inch if you've got an inch long needle. Sure.
Okay.
Okay. That probably freaks everybody out, doesn't it?
And,
Wait a minute, I didn't say that.
And that's both for the meridian and for the ouch spots.
The ashi.
Ashi.
Yeah.
Okay. So both,
we're gonna get you using that as much as possible.
Yes. So both the chi and the ashi.
Yeah.
You might insert the needles deeper.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And it's by feel. If I was doing it on you today and doing it tomorrow and using the same points, it may not always go in the same depth. It's about what the body is telling me.
Okay.
Your body speaks a language.
So
Just have to listen.
I am aware that in the traditional acupuncture, that it's not, it's not just obviously the trigger zones, and that there's freeing up of energy, and that can have effects on functioning of the internal organs of the body. Correct?
Yes, it's interesting. The science of acupuncture is still, it's not as well known as we'd like, but there's been acupuncture done under functional MRI. A functional MRI is looking at analyzing and measuring blood flow and oxygen flow to the body, or wherever you have the MRI. And what we found is that acupuncture has an acute effect on what's called the limbic system. It's a part of the brain. It's one of the older parts of the brain, and it is involved with our autonomic responses, blood pressure, heart rate, digestion, our endocrine system. So it's a very systemic kind of a thing. The limbic system affects all parts of the body. So even that, which is why you put in a needle somewhere, here, wherever. You're not just affecting here. You're affecting other parts of the body as well. And all of these points have a function. When stimulated, there is a response in the body. The response scientifically is probably a neurochemical response, if you want to put it in Western terms, but in Eastern terms, in acupuncture terms, it's about the chi and balancing the chi.
So it would seem that having a balanced chi should just make every part of physiology work better. But if somebody comes in and says, I have insomnia, I would imagine you're not just going to try to balance all their chi. You're going to work on particular meridians that might, from experience, know that it affects sleep.
Yes, there are. I'm going to date myself here, but maybe I'll bring you along for the ride. So radios, we remember radios with knobs, right? Volume knobs, right? You're turning the volume up or turning it down.
Yeah.
Right. So with acupuncture, if you want to look at it on a binary way, you're either trying to turn the volume up or turn it down, depending on what somebody comes in with. Somebody comes in with sleep issues. Usually you want to turn the volume down. The mind's too active, right? There's stimuli that are causing the body to wakefulness. You want to turn it down. Someone comes in with irritable bowel, pain, inflammation, same thing, turn it down. How about the other side? Someone comes in with fatigue, right? There's low energy. We want to turn the volume up. So there are specific points that are doing those specific things. So you're right. It's not everybody comes in, we're going to do the same 12 points or 15 points or 6 points, whatever. It is specific for whatever that person is feeling.
What would you say are the conditions that you have the most success with in terms of helping to make the patient feel better?
Right. I'll give you one physical one, one non-physical one. One of the most common ones is neuropathy. Neuropathy into the hands, into the feet, oftentimes chemo-induced neuropathy. That is something that there are very specific, very powerful points for, and there's been a lot of success with that. From a non-physical standpoint, stress and anxiety. The mind body connection is, we go back to holistic care. There was an author, a peace activist and author in the late 70s named Norman Cousins. I'm sure a lot of people remember that name. And he wrote a seminal book, I think 1979, called Anatomy of an Illness. And he talked about a really significant health situation that he was going through. And while he was bedridden during this time, he forced himself each day to watch several hours of the Marx Brothers. He loved the Marx Brothers, and it brought him joy. It brought him laughter. And so having this time each day where he was feeling joy and pleasure and laughing, he felt that it propelled him down the road toward health and recovery much faster than it would have otherwise. So while that's not directly acupuncture related, what it does point out is the really strong mind-body connection, because physical trauma, whether that be illness, treatment of illness, that can manifest itself just as easily and poignantly with anxiety, stress, some of these sort of physical things. But the converse is true as well. You can have stress and anxiety and sleep issues that manifest itself with physical issues. And so there's a cross-pollination of the two. And it's really important, again, to look at how a patient is working together, both emotionally, intellectually, physically. It's all one package.
So you provide acupuncture service to patients at the Mercy One Richard Deming Cancer Center. And I see the patients first to talk about all the issues they're experiencing. And typically my conversation will be, after we review their cancer history, is what issues are you experiencing now? And by issues, I'll say I'm interested in physical, but I'm also interested in psychosocial, emotional, financial, sexual, spiritual, philosophical. What are the issues? We talk about them, and then I will say, we've got about 30 different services we provide. Which ones of these services match the issues you're experiencing to try to make them better? So I'm going to go through a series of issues that patients tell me about, and I'd like to have you tell me whether acupuncture may play a role in helping with these issues. For those who don't know, besides acupuncture, we also have massage therapy, chiropractic care, Reiki, reflexology, physical therapy, osteopathic manipulation, mental health counseling, music therapy, art therapy, yoga therapy, nutritional counseling. So a number of them. So we don't send everybody to acupuncture depending on the issues. So you've already touched on one big issue for many, many, many patients who've been through chemotherapy, and that is peripheral neuropathy. We talked about insomnia, but maybe you talk a little bit more about the role of acupuncture and how successful. And, it's one thing to think, okay, you're going to dial down the volume, but, it's at 9 a.m. I'm not going to bed until, tonight at 9. It's harder for me it'd be easier for me to understand, okay, I want to go to bed in half an hour, give me a treatment, and then I'm going to go to bed. But how does acupuncture once a week help every night's sleep?
Yeah, it's kind of like going on a diet. When you decide to go on a diet, I want to lose 10 pounds. And so in supper, instead of having my giant steak and two baked potatoes and everything else, I decide to have something, some yogurt and piece of fruit or whatnot. If I go and jump on the scale, half hour after I do that, I won't see any discernible difference. There isn't. It doesn't happen right away. It's about setting the stage for the body to heal itself. The body is a wonderful self-healing machine. Mm. And so what we're trying to do, and instead of saying, bang, get up, now you're now you're sleepy, or now you're awake, or now you're whatever. Instead, it's now your body is starting on the path toward where you want to go. It's starting on the healing path. So to your point, yes, it doesn't matter if it's 9 in the morning, 9 at night. It's not this snap the fingers. It's setting the stage and putting the paint on the canvas.
Okay. You started your description of how you became interested in acupuncture with a sprained ankle and swelling. So one condition that many cancer patients have, especially breast cancer patients who've had mastectomy and perhaps radiation, is lymphedema of the arm. Does acupuncture play a role in helping with lymphedema?
Yes, it does. It does. When you think about the word movement is used a lot. In the world of chiropractic, when we're talking about joints, we're talking about motion is your friend, motion is life. We want joints to move and move freely. In the world of acupuncture, we're talking about the movement of chi and energy and the other circulatory systems of the body, the blood, the lymph, all these things that are moving. Anything that is stagnating or causing stagnating is something that is wonderfully treated with acupuncture.
Okay. And for our patients that have gone through chemotherapy, radiation therapy for head and neck cancer, we've got xerostomia, meaning dry mouth. We have difficulty swallowing. We've got stiff neck. Are those conditions that acupuncture can help with?
They are dry eyes as well. Yeah, anything moisture, that's another thing. We're talking about movement, saliva, we're talking about movement through the salivary ducts. We're talking about tears through the tear ducts. Our bodies are designed to be constantly in motion. And when you see those kind of things you just described, where there is not motion, that is wonderfully treated with acupuncture.
And how about digestion?
I haven't seen as much of that. I've seen more nausea as a response to and that's done quite well. Pure digestive issues haven't seen as much of, but nausea is a big thing.
Because you're talking about
debilitating.
Flow of fluids, whether it's in your lymph system, your blood, your saliva, your tears. I mean, lots of flowing of stuff from mouth to anus.
You are. Yes.
Okay. Other issues that patients may experience would be fibrosis of soft tissue from radiation. So a woman getting breast radiation, you don't just get your breast radiated, the pectoralis muscle, and if you're getting lymph nodes treated, the latissimus dorsi, the trapezius, and that even years after the radiation, you can get stiffness, fibrosis. Does traditional Qi acupuncture or Oshi acupuncture help with fibrosis?
Yeah, my approach would be more manipulative therapy.
Right. Maybe more relying on your chiropractic skills.
Yes.
Okay.
Because fibrosis, again, you're talking about hypercontractile area, talking about the space occupying fluid and scar tissue. So I would use more of a manipulative procedure rather than, or both. The nice thing, these two types of treatments don't contradict each other. They really do augment each other. And that's what caught my eye right away, and how it can really be effective in practice.
And you mentioned anxiety. What about, we maybe lumped together called psychosocial distress, but being told you have a disease that may prematurely end your life, or especially those patients we see that are living with stage 4 cancer, fear of progression, fear of death. Does that psychosocial distress, are there certain meridians that you think can be helpful along with the mental health counselors that we provide patients? Do you think acupuncture, is there a role for acupuncture in treating psychosocial distress?
I'll go back to the limbic system again, which is something I mentioned before about how acupuncture, what it affects. Besides those autonomic roles that the limbic system has, what is housed in the limbic system are our basal emotions, our sort of primal emotions: anger, fear, survival. These are our really basic underlying emotions. And when you can pacify the limbic system and you can remove the volatility of the emotions that it controls, you go a long way toward having control of your emotions. Because so much of that fear is a fear of lack of control. I'm helpless. I am not in control of myself anymore. Something is happening to me rather than me controlling itself. And if you can change that, if you can look on the functional MRI and change that from red to green, and make that patient feel like they are in control of themselves, their future, their bodies, they are in charge, that I think that goes a long way toward health. Because that mind body connection again, when we are fearing, everything that goes along with fearing, that reduces the body's effectiveness. And when you are dealing with something, whether it be cancer, whether it be anything, whether it be the treatment of cancer, whatever you're dealing with, you want your body's immune system, endocrine system, everything to be working as powerfully as it can. And that's where the limbic system comes into play.
And so you have particular meridians or points on
There are.
meridians that you would use
Yes.
for individuals that are feeling stress, fear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and again,
And if I interrupt for a sec there, and part of that is the atmosphere in the room. Anybody who has had acupuncture, they know that the room is dark, the room is quiet except for some soft music, stimuli are kept to a minimum, and the patients are told, empty your mind. Acupuncture works best when the mind is uncluttered and unfettered by, what am I going to do for lunch today? Where am I going after this? Does my car need new brakes? And so with the wonderful practitioners there who are teaching meditative techniques and other techniques, that goes hand in glove as well. Because if you can get into that meditative state where you just feel this sort of bubble of relaxation and nothing else is there, that allows acupuncture to work at its utmost.
Right. So as you describe this, and for us, you're describing it in a rather animated way. I suspect that with the patient in the room, as you're getting ready, you probably instill in them or teach them a few little tricks that we might say are meditation or mindfulness to help them get into that space.
100% true.
Yeah.
Generally, we'll be talking normally until I'm getting near the end. And then I kind of go into my low monotone voice and I start talking about what they should be in and think about. And because I can't just turn off the switch and expect them to turn off the switch. And we're going 100 miles an hour talking about tailgating at a football game and suddenly, okay, stop now and just be there. Well, that's difficult. So you do have to kind of lead them in.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I've got the patient who's given me these issues. Here's some other common issues of patients that have gone through cancer treatment. Many women going through breast cancer treatment might be slammed into menopause, not gently get there, and some menopausal symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, sexual dysfunction, are those issues that acupuncture can help with.
Endocrine system, absolutely. It's when you are dealing with hormones, the endocrine system, you are dealing with a systemic problem. And so, yes, anything endocrine related absolutely can be. And when I say helped, no one in the right mind would say, guess what? You're going to be 100% cured. We don't make those kind of promises. No, what we want to do, though, is maximize your health, minimize the problem, and meet somewhere in between and make life easier.
So I've never referred a patient to you for this reason, but we talk about it. Erectile dysfunction. Are there meridians that you learn from ancient Chinese that are places to put needles and
They don't go there, by the way. I just
right.
want to
I was
clear
going to
the
say
air.
nobody's
Just want to
going
make
to
sure
come
that
and see
absolutely
you.
clear.
But so yeah, it's hard to talk about that without a little chuckle.
Yeah.
But it's a serious issue.
Yeah.
So I've never sent you a patient say, this patient has erectile dysfunction. How about some acupuncture?
Yeah, listen, I've never treated a patient for that, but it's a vascular issue.
Mhm.
And anytime you're dealing with a vascular issue, there absolutely
So
are
if you look
points.
in your bound papyrus from
Yeah.
China, you're going to find the needles.
There's,
Do you have to pull out
the
the
appropriate
book?
diagrams. Yeah.
If you've never done it before, do you have to?
I would absolutely look it up. Did I
Uh-huh.
save all my textbooks and things?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's see. Why don't we open it up to questions? Because I covered many issues that patients might be experiencing, but I bet our live studio audience might have some questions that I didn't think of. So if you are watching us live streaming right now, you can put your question in the comments section of the software you're using to watch us right now. But we're going to let our live studio audience have first shot at Dr. Pearson here. Yes,
Dr.
Poon.
Pearson, how often would you recommend acupuncture? And does it depend on the situation?
This answer is going to seem wishy-washy, but it's the true one, even if it is wishy-washy. Everybody is different. There is no cake recipe for you and you and you and you and everybody else. I always say that the body tells you a story, and nobody knows you like you. Okay. And so I may have an idea what would be a good frequency, a good amount of times, but the better judge is you, because it will help people to varying degrees. And if something is helping, we want to keep that train going. If something isn't helping, either we change tracks, or we say, you know what, there are other ways to kind of help you out. And so the best judge of that probably is you.
So if money and access and availability weren't an issue, and if the what you're treating is lymphedema of the arm, that you probably is going to be a forever thing that maybe comes and goes and gets worse or better. But somebody's just starting to get lymphedema after surgery and radiation. What would be the ideal? And again, it's every patient's different, but if cost availability, and by the way, at the Mercy One Richard Deming Cancer Center, we have an endowment that we raise with philanthropy that covers the cost of acupuncture. But what are we talking about? Once a day for a week, once a week for a month? What's sort of the standard sort of intervals?
If there were no roadblocks there, like you mentioned, once a week.
Okay.
Once a week, until we have a good idea about whether it's helping, whether it's not. Ideally, then we start to scale back, but absolutely once a week.
Okay. Next question. Yes,
I have two questions. The first one is a follow-up of what you're just talking about here. And that is let's say I have a treatment, and I have treatment every week for like X number of weeks. Is there the idea that you're completely cured of your lymphedema, for instance? Is that a thing?
You know, symptoms are always lurking right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And you can, in the world of cancer, you talk about remission all the time. And remission doesn't necessarily mean cured. It means that it's good for right now. So we always look for the good right now. And I wish we had the crystal ball and we could say, guess what? That's it. You will never get that again. Can't say that. Maybe it'll happen, but can't say it. As long as what we were looking for is the good for right now.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you. Very good conversation tonight, by the way, from both doctors here. I have one more question for you, Tim. That is it possible for you that you have done acupuncture on yourself?
I do acupuncture myself all the time. In the world of, especially when I was practicing, full time before I went to other pursuits like the Mercy College of Health Sciences. But what the bane of the existence of anyone who's doing a lot of the physical arts, the extensor muscles in the forearm, right? You use these all the time, right? All the time. And so I am always acupuncture myself because I can get at it. Now, if there are points, other parts of my body, a little more difficult to get at.
And are
Very
you
easy to do it here.
ambidextrous? Can you acupuncture with your? Are you left or right handed?
I'm right-handed.
So can you use your left hand to acupuncture your right arm?
I can barely brush my teeth with my left hand, but I can acupuncture
Okay.
with my left hand.
Okay. We have time for one more question.
Well, I have a question about the lymphedema, since that's been the topic here. I wanted to be a nurse, but when I realized I fainted when I saw a needle, yeah, that wasn't, and I had to look away for a flu shot. I mean, when they draw blood, but we were told that we're not to have any needle or blood pressure done on our arm, lymphedema. How does this work actually with the needle with acupuncture?
Most people, and it's such a good question, because I think most people, when they think about needles, they think about needles that are either injecting something or withdrawing something. Those needles have a wide aperture. They're hollow because there needs to be something in there. Acupuncture needles, and I really wish I had one with me, they are hair thin. They're very thin. They're flexible as well. They're stainless steel. They're flexible and incredibly thin. And so it's not the physical trauma of putting this giant aperture needle into you that you would think about. It is, for most people, you barely feel. You barely feel it when you go in,
Right.
and if you do, it's gone in a second or two.
So your answer is yes, it's safe and effective
Yes,
to use needles into an
Yes.
arm that has lymphedema.
absolutely.
Okay. One last question.
So, doctor, you mentioned about acupuncture as a functional MRI. And so I'm wondering if acupuncture could be used in order to check for any tumors, like when you're doing an acupuncture, like do you see any blood stasis or a block or a stagnation of the blood, like maybe when you look at the tongue and you see a discoloration, so that gives you an idea that there could be some tumor lurking.
That's really interesting. In fact, you talked about, are you familiar with tongue diagnostics and acupuncture? Yeah. So I don't know how much time. I know
You've got 1 minute.
I've got 1 minute. I will go away from the functional MRI question to the tongue question, because the functional MRI question is, I think that's a really interesting idea, and whether it's being done right now, I don't know what the research is, but it's interesting. But in traditional acupuncture diagnostic, it was pulse diagnostics and tongue diagnostics. They were looking at the threadiness and depth and pace of the pulse, and also the texture of the tongue, both above and below, to diagnose issues in the body. Now, it's not done as much as it used to be. There are other diagnostic tools which I find much more effective, but that is a real thing, is looking at that and extrapolating that to problems elsewhere in the body.
But do you, in the act of doing the acupuncture, in the act of putting needles places, think, oh my gosh, I think the cancer is back inside the body?
I wish I knew that. And
I would say no, you don't.
No, I don't.
That's not something that
No.
so that you're focusing on the chi, but there's not something that you do that you get a feedback. Oh, I think something's going on with this chi, that there's a tumor somewhere in the body.
I don't know that I can make that leap.
No. Yeah.
No.
I didn't think so either.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of specifically answer the question. We're out of time. Dr. Tim Pearson,
Ooh.
thank you for being with
Thank
us.
you.
Chiropractor and acupuncture. Do you like the phrase acupuncturist or acupuncture provider, or
Acupuncturist is kind of easy. It's one word.
acupuncturist?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm a simple guy.
acupuncturist, and also a senior director at the Mercy College of Health Sciences. Thank you for being our guest. If you know someone that would benefit by watching this program will be available on demand beginning tomorrow at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and the Mercy Cancer Center website. I hope you'll join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Excellent. This is great.